Hello, everyone, and welcome to season three, episode seven of the No-Frills Teacher Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Camps, and tonight's episode is called Mosquitoes and Methods, building engaging educational content, featuring my good friend, Mark McCreary. Mark, thank you for joining me tonight.
Well, first of all, Joe, thank you for having me. And I think congratulations is in order. We haven't talked for a while, but I've been keeping up with you on Facebook, and it seems like you have a book that just came out. You got a new job. So can you fill me in first a little bit about what you've been up to?
Absolutely. It's fine. I'm not used to the one usually being, asked the questions on the podcast, but yes, thank you. By the way, I did recently publish a book, self-published. It is called No Frills Writing. You can find it on Amazon and barnesandnoble.com. All things writing instruction, kindergarten, all the way up to high school. There's my little plug, by the way. And yes, also, I am in a new role. I am a primary K to 2 literacy coach at Manatee Elementary. Previously, I was a fifth grade English language arts and U.S. history teacher, still within Lee County, moved back
Mhm.
to Manatee Elementary. This is my second stint, my second go around at Manatee. And we have a little bit of history, don't we, at Manatee, you and I?
Yeah, that's where we first met, 10 years ago, approximately?
Yeah,
We
about
met,
2000,
we were
2015.
both just a little bit younger. I was working at the school district in the elementary science curriculum department, and you were a coach. Was that your first stint as a coach?
Yes, it was actually. I had left I left teaching kindergarten of all things. I was over at Veterans Park Academy for the Arts and as a kindergarten teacher. And then I was offered the position of a teacher leader. They call them pure collaborative teachers now in county, which is basically an instructional coach. 2015, 2016 was my first year at Manatee supporting upper elementary. And yes, that's where you and I met, I believe.
Yes, it was. I was mentoring the gentleman that was a career changer in your classroom, Mr. Brown, who now teaches biology at North Fort Myers High School. Kind of coming full circle, I'll be in his class, I believe in December. So can't wait to catch up. He always asks about you. I don't know if you're needed a guest on, but maybe sometime the three of us could sit down and have a little podcast and talk to Shane about his progression
Oh,
from elementary, middle to high school. That would be a very entertaining episode to say the least.
yeah, entertaining to say the least. And that one, yep, I'll save that gem for the future for our listeners. 100%. Absolutely. And Shane Brown, trust me, those that are listening to this podcast, you will get to meet Shane at some point this year and all the wonderful things that he is doing as
Do
a
you think
fellow career changer like myself.
do you think we'll get a chance to talk in that episode or
No, no chance whatsoever. No,
okay, we'll
no. I,
we'll just have to get him a script and keep him on the
you
rails.
rein him in because I would just press that mute button and I'm going to let him do his thing. But that's for the future. Here today, I'm with you this evening. I'm very excited. I'm honored you to be with me on the show tonight. So for my listeners, Mark does work for Lee County Mosquito Control District. And we'll get into a little bit about what you do with that department, with that program, and how you support students. People might hear mosquito and be like, I hate mosquitoes. Like, why do
That's
I
what
need to,
everybody does. Yeah.
like that's probably a normal reaction response when people,
Yes.
hear about mosquitoes. But before we get into that, and you talked about supporting one of our science teachers back 10 years ago. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, Mark. Like, what were you doing prior to working for the Lee County Mosquito Control District? This episode is education, building engaging educational content. It was a bit of a tongue twister, so I do
Mhm.
apologize for messing up the intro. Usually that does not happen, but tell us, besides that tongue twister, like what exactly is it that you do? Who is Mark McCreary besides being just an all around great guy?
Well, thank you, Joe, for the compliments. I am going to rewind it all the way back. I'm originally from Wisconsin. I started out my teaching career in Wisconsin as an elementary science teacher. I taught a year of fifth and a year of sixth. And at that time, sixth grade was in the elementary realm, and I taught science. Now, coming right out of college and going right into the classroom, first thing I asked was, okay, where's our science textbook? And at the time, our school district in Wisconsin, they didn't have a textbook, which was a blessing in disguise because we had what are called FOSS and everything was hands on. So really from the beginning of my educational career, I learned how to teach science through hands-on experience. I could bring in vocabulary, but everything revolved around that hands-on experience. I was having fun. My students were having fun, but more importantly, my students were learning. Fast forward 2 years after that, I followed my principal down to Lee County. I taught for about 15 years at Tropic Isles Elementary, first as a fifth grade teacher, inclusion teacher, and then at the science lab. And when I first came down, they had those textbooks and I was so excited, but that excitement did not last for long because not only was I not having fun teaching science anymore, my students were bored, my students weren't learning, and I quickly pushed those textbooks to the side and got out those hands-on experiences again. And that's when my teaching became fun again. My students were learning. And that's really kind of one of the things I want to talk about today is, those methods that we're talking about, but those hands-on experiences. And that was something then I was able to, after my 15 years at Tropic Isles, bring down to the school district and as a elementary science coach, help build that program and really bringing in those hands-on, those real-world experiences into the classroom. And that's something that is kind of that thread that's kind of woven through our mosquito education program, which is one of, if not the best program in the United States, in my opinion.
And I've seen this firsthand, by the way. For those that are listening to this episode, I've been very fortunate for Mark and his colleagues to come and visit my classroom and my peers' classrooms throughout the years and work with these students. And I think you hit the nail on the head. Absolutely. It's that hands-on, it's that hands-on learning, it's that engagement instead of just out of the textbook. Because so kind of dating myself a little bit, we had this thing that was P-Cell in
Yeah.
Florida, Lee County. And I remember when I was supporting fifth grade teachers as an instructional coach for science, they would just take out these, spiral bound, notebooks. And I understand kind of the why behind they were given and
Yeah.
expected to be used with teachers.
Yeah.
However, the kids, they were lost. Science was not fun. And I feel, and I believe you feel the same way, and correct me if I'm wrong, that something like science, that should be hands-on learning. It is about curiosity. It is about experimentation. It is about observation, all those things. And that just wasn't cutting the mustard, so to speak.
Yeah. And you hit it on the head. The kids weren't having fun. And all the other classes are, they're in the books. But I always tell teachers, like, if you're going to teach a student how to tie their shoes or how to ride a bike, are you going to give them a worksheet? Are you going to give them vocabulary? Are you going to give a presentation on PowerPoint? Or are you going to actually have them do the hands-on, make mistakes, learn from those mistakes? And that's one of the big things about science is letting the students know it's okay to fail. You're going to just learn from those mistakes. And it's something that really is kind of a valuable life lesson. Last year, we were able to see almost 20,000 students in person and another 6,000 students virtually. So we saw over 25,000 students last year. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to give you kind of a little bit of background on our 4 programs that we have.
No, absolutely. I think I'd love for you to share it. And I really think that it's awesome for us to educate our audience, those that are listening, locally and, nationally and internationally, what is going on. You had mentioned about one of the top programs. And listen, once again, to those that are listening to this episode, that is not just Mark's opinion. That I believe to be true. And can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So in 1987, T. Wayne Miller, who was actually the first executive director of Lee County Mosquito Control, had an idea that he wanted to strengthen community relationships through school-based outreach. So what he did at the time was reached out to James Melvin, who was then the superintendent, and said, "Hey, I have an idea. I'm going to hire a teacher. They're going to go in and they're going to teach science-based, hands-on real world lessons. And from there, it went from one teacher to two teacher, and it just kind of grown from there. And I can't take any of the credit because Neil Wilkinson, Brian Murphy are kind of two of the pioneers that really kind of laid the foundation for the program that remains today. The only thing that we've really done, our team, is kind of keep those topics current. With the content, it's always technology, the methods that we use at Mosquito Control, just kind of updating those and, keeping those topics relevant. But those are kind of really the two pioneers. And I really owe a lot to Mr. Miller and Mr. Melvin for trusting and letting us expand that. And it continues today. We have a very supportive board of commissioners, and I'll kind of explain how the structure of our mosquito education program within the school district works. But our director, Dr. Hole, our assistant director, Aaron Lloyd, along with our commissioners, are very supportive. And I definitely couldn't do it without the greatest team ever. Jen McBride is our communications director, and she kind of oversees everything. And, talk about letting us have the freedom to be innovative. I couldn't think of a better person I would want to work for. Our two educators at the school district, Amy Lucas, Jason Burgess, they're actually two of the reasons why I actually wanted to come back to mosquito control. It's a great team. And then we have Jamie Fowler, who is our community engagement coordinator. And we just kind of all work together to really talk about the awesome things that we do at Lee County Mosquito Control. We're actually the world's largest mosquito control district, and we have the world's largest education program.
A team of rock stars. You're absolutely right.
Yes, yep. I think
Yeah, I know. Yeah, Jim, right. Many throughout the years, if not by reputation, that have I not personally interacted with them, which many have visited, schools that I taught at. Reputation precedes them as far as being just like you said, exceptional educators.
Yeah, yeah. And when I had the opportunity to come back and work for Jen, I knew that's what I wanted to do because we're working on a couple of projects that I'm excited about. Maybe I'll hint around at them a little bit because we're always trying to expand. One of the things that we're really trying to expand is our virtual platform, and Jen and I have a great idea. But back in 1987, the school district of Lee County had just under 38,000 students, and today we have 117 schools, over 1,000 students. We also have another in the district, 48 private schools with about another 10,000 students. So the county has really kind of exploded since then. And we have really those two full-time educators. And then I'm in the classroom 3, 4, sometimes days a week. So we're kind of maxed out where the number of students that we can see in person, but we're kind of building, like I said, some of the virtual platforms that we have, and we're even thinking about expanding hopefully soon.
That's amazing. How about the methods? So you had mentioned there's a couple of methods. I think you met 4, if I'm not correct. Is that my mistaken?
Yeah. So starting with our kindergarten program, this is the program that really kind of introduces our youngest learners to life science. And we start out by, again, all of these programs are standards based. And that's where a lot of vector educators, they'll ask us, we get into the schools, but we can't get back into the schools. What is your secret? And the secret is it has to be hands-on, it has to be engaging, and it has to be standards based. And a lot of those educators don't have that education background. There may be an entomologist, maybe a biologist. And we're like, teachers don't have time just for some cute activity. It has to be standards based. So what we do is we cover the insect life cycle. We read a book to them that is basically kind of like a very hungry caterpillar, but it's a book that we wrote with the Puerto Rico Vector Association, and it talks about the life cycle of a mosquito. And then the students get to design their own mosquito, which, along the way teaches them the characteristics of a mosquito, and they get to see mosquito larvae. And we're really kind of trying to please two entities. We have the Mosquito Control District, which really funds this entire program. But then those educators work for the school district. So we want to make sure that we're covering the standards. And we're going to, I'll talk a little bit. We're making sure that we have those safeguards to make sure that we're kind of covering all of our bases. And one of our big goals with the school or for mosquito control is dumping out standing water. The Aedes aegypti is a mosquito that the one species we're really trying to eradicate. They like to lay their eggs in and around homes, schools, businesses, in containers, anything that holds as little as a bottle cap full of water, those mosquitoes can breed. So as soon as those kindergarten students see those mosquito larvae, we want them to dump that out. So that's our youngest program. Kind of our flagship program. That's the one that you saw, Joe.
Yeah.
And our goal every year is to see every single fifth grade student in the county. We just had our signups last week and we already have every single public fifth grade signed up and ready to go. And it's our
Wow.
focus on the life cycle and the impacts of weather in Southwest Florida on the mosquitoes. We've had a horrible start to the year because we had a drought, and that drought kind of what happened was the dry winter allowed mosquito eggs to accumulate in those salt marsh areas. And then in late May and June, we had lots and lots of rain, which triggered a massive
Oh,
rapid hatching of billions and billions of mosquitoes. And this species, the Aedes taeniorhynchus, the salt marsh mosquito, they can fly up to 40 miles inland if the wind conditions are right. And most
oh,
mosquito species, they can't fly that long. So the biggest thing that we get is at outreach events, and it's usually not the students, it's the adults. They're like, can you just get rid of all mosquitoes? And we're like, no, because the mosquitoes are a very valuable part of the ecosystem. And I'm going to ask you a question in a second, see what if you were paying attention last year, Joe. But our main hands-on activities, we do a skeeter eater lab. One of the benefits of mosquitoes is lots of aquatic predators eat mosquito larvae. Mosquito fish, dragonfly nymphs, tadpoles, crayfish, shrimp, they all really rely heavily on the mosquito larvae. So they're a very important part of the food chain.
and
Now,
you
the
and you bring
second,
them out to the schools, don't you? I
yeah, we bring
remember.
them out to the schools, yeah. And the students get to, make scientific observations. We teach them what a scientific observation is. And it's kind of sad because a lot of the students have never seen a crayfish before or a tadpole. And, back before cell phones, that's what we did. We would go outside, we would be in nature, we would be, after it would rain, we would catch tadpoles. Times are different now. And so teaching them the importance. Now,
It's true.
most people think that mosquitoes eat blood. Do you remember, Joe, what they eat?
Is it the plasma?
Not not the plasma. Well, we can tell that
Well,
you
I know
must
the
have been in the
female. The
back
female.
polishing your golden apple while I
I.
was going.
I think that's exactly what I was
Yeah,
doing. But I do know the females are the
you were
ones who do
polishing
the.
my golden apple.
Is the females bite?
Yes.
I know that, right? Because they need to get
Yeah.
the blood
Females
meal.
bite. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. The blood meal. So both male and female mosquitoes actually feed on nectar, and that is, that sugar is high energy. That's how they get their nutrition, their energy. Only the females bite. They require that blood meal so that they can produce eggs. They're going to use those protein-rich red blood cells. They're going to digest those, and then they're going to lay eggs. So we teach the importance of mosquitoes in the ecosystem, and that fifth grade program is one of my favorites because the students get so excited when they're seeing those animals, and it's one of my favorite programs.
yeah. I might embarrass myself again. Besides,
That's all
not
right.
knowing that. So I'm gonna go for. Let's see if I'm 0 for 2. Correct me if I'm wrong. They are pollinators. Mosquitoes.
They are what are called incidental pollinators.
Okay.
As they're feeding on that nectar, that pollen is, you know, attached to the hairs and the scales on their
Mhm.
wings. And
But
so
not
yes, they
pollinator
are.
in the sense of like a bee, just incidental.
Yeah, so they don't have as much surface area as like a bee or some of the other animals, but yeah, definitely with the numbers of mosquitoes that we have in Lake County, they're definitely pollinators.
So I do have to ask this, and then you kind of mentioned about like, yeah, adults will say like, why can't you get rid of all the mosquitoes? And that led to what I kind of we were talking about prior to this episode. My wife, Alexis, who teaches on Sanibel Island, was like, can Mark just come out and get rid of all the mosquitoes and no CMs? And the reason we say no is because,
Really, the mosquitoes, the majority of the work that we do is out on the barrier islands and those salt marsh areas because 1 square foot of salt marsh can hold up to 40,000 mosquito eggs.
wow,
And, 1/10 of Lee County is salt marsh. We have more salt marsh areas in Lee County, I believe, than the rest of the Florida coast combined. So you think about the East Coast, it's all built up. So when we have a massive hatch off like we did this year, it's not it's not a good time. And then no-see-ums are also really an issue because after the hurricanes, no-see-ums their life cycle is in the mud. And so with all the habitat destruction and all the shifting, there's a lot more habitat for those no-see-ums. So when we do treat for adults, we will, the no-see-ums will also get knocked down. But because they don't carry disease, they're not a vector. That's why we don't treat for them.
Oh, and the no-see-ums, they love me for some reason. I don't, maybe it's just like they smell, the glucose in me or like my blood
Yeah.
cipher or something like that. I maybe, I don't, it's not like the cologne, but as far as, and some people might be listening like, oh, what in the heck is a no-see-um? I don't really know how to describe it except that it's something that you barely could see that has the bite of an
Hmm.
alligator.
Hmm.
At least to me, it feels that way. But maybe could you educate us? Is it a mosquito? Is it in the same family?
It is an insect. It is so tiny that it can actually, fly through a screen. If you have a screened in lanai, that's gonna without holes, that's gonna keep out the mosquitoes, but the no-see-ums can actually fly right through there. It is an insect. They're also another name is called biting midges. They're like 1 to 3 millimeters, and another nickname is sandflies. And they're active again like mosquitoes during dawn and dusk, and they're much harder to see. And their bite often feels sharper because mosquitoes, when they take a blood meal from you, the first thing that female does is spits a little bit of saliva on your skin to numb your skin before her stylets, which are 6 needles in her proboscis, take that blood meal. And those no-see-ums, you can't see them, and they just bite.
They just
They
go. They just go at you.
they just go. Yeah, in my opinion, they're worse than mosquitoes.
Oh yeah, I remember getting out of my car when I saw that Sanibel, and like as soon as I stepped foot outside of my car, like they're like attacking my scalp, my legs, the no-see-ums. Of course, it's
Yeah,
like I
yeah,
was lucky if I could make it to my classroom without getting
yeah,
attacked. And you said they
yeah.
don't carry disease now. Aedes aegypti, am I saying that correctly?
Yep, Aedes aegypti. We have 54 species of mosquitoes in Lee County, and we only control for 15 because those are the ones that vector diseases. Many of them vector dog heartworm, which is very prevalent here in Southwest Florida. That's why it's important that if you have a dog, that it is on a Heartgard medication. But yeah, that's one of the reasons why we trap mosquitoes. It's not to reduce the numbers; it's to figure out what species we have, where they're at, and then also we do some different testing to make sure that we don't have any mosquito-borne diseases in the county. Chikungunya is a mosquito-borne disease that is making a comeback here in Florida. So we're always on the lookout for mosquito-borne diseases, which
Malaria,
we
something like is that something that is in Southwest Florida has been reported or not something as common nowadays?
nope, it's more common in Africa. That's where, you know, mosquitoes kill approximately 1 million people per year, and the majority of those are from malaria in underdeveloped areas like Africa. Malaria is no longer endemic in Florida. If we do have a case, it's usually a traveler's case where somebody will go visit somewhere, become infected, and they don't realize it until they come back to Florida. West Nile is another mosquito-borne disease that we're always, monitoring for, and that's often, Charlotte County had a sentinel chicken that tested positive for that a couple of weeks ago, but that's something that often birds are what's called a bridge vector. They're carrying that disease, and we have a couple different techniques that we use to make sure that those diseases stay out of Lee County.
Why do you think, Mark, that we have such a large program or facility here in Lee County? Like, is it just like you said, because of the makeup of the land, the salt marsh? Is it just something that just became of vested interest in the community and just has expanded over the years? Like, if I'm listening to this episode, I'm thinking to myself, why mosquitoes? Like, what's the big deal about mosquitoes? And then why is it important to go and educate these students about mosquitoes?
Because even though we don't currently have any mosquito-borne diseases it's always a potential. We do have occasionally mosquito-borne diseases in the county, but it's our goal is to make sure that they stay out of the county. And if we do find a mosquito-borne disease, we knock those mosquitoes down before they have a chance to infect a human. September 15th, 1950, on Sanibel Island near Lighthouse Beach, one of our New Jersey light traps caught a world record, 365,696 mosquitoes. And that New Jersey light trap was full to the top. And Lee County is over 500,000 acres of land, and 56,000 acres of that land is salt marsh habitat. So 1/10 of our county is a landmass that consists of that mosquito breeding salt marsh. And, a lot of species are just dependent on rain, but the Aedes taeniorhynchus, the Aedes sollicitans are two species that a lot of times they'll lay their eggs on mangrove roots in the damp soil, and then when the tides go up. So not only are we monitoring rainfall, but we're also measuring or monitoring tides, which also hatch off those salt marsh mosquitoes.
When we
Temperature is another component.
So, and I'm sorry, so I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was going to say is that, well, we get tropical storms and hurricanes. What kind of impact does that play? What kind of role does that play in the mosquito population? Does it knock it out? Does it make it 10 times worse? I'm exaggerating, obviously, but
No,
how does
right on.
this, what does that impact does that have on it?
It makes it a lot worse. It's creating a lot more habitat, a lot more standing water, and it just makes it just very difficult. All that rain is going to hatch out a lot of eggs that usually wouldn't hatch out, but yeah, it definitely enhances the mosquito activity in the county.
Mark, do you guys go beyond fifth grade? I mean, obviously, that's as far as I know with the mosquito education program. Is that kind of where it stops, or do you move on and try to, go and see high school students, middle school students?
Yeah, we also have a middle school program, a seventh grade program, and that is where we really explore common insect characteristics, and we kind of spotlight obviously the mosquito. We bring in a lot of cased insects from different insects from around the world, and then we also do the ecological importance of insects, and then our hands-on component is we do a mosquito identification lab where we're bringing in different species of not only adult mosquitoes but mosquito larvae, and we're showing them, having the students look under the scopes and identifying what species they are. And so it's kind of really an introduction to entomology. And we like to introduce some of the jobs that we have here at Lee County Mosquito Control. So they can see just how, difficult those jobs of our entomologists are. Because, 20 years ago, I would have never thought that my career was focused on mosquitoes. And it's just fascinating because when I first started, or first learned of mosquito control, I just assumed that you take out airplanes, you spray pesticides, you kill mosquitoes. And that's much, much more than that. There's so much science behind it. The majority of what we do is actually using biological controls. About 75% of what we do, depending on the year, is using larviciding, using gambusia, which are mosquito fish, and just, the techniques are just getting safer and safer and safer. One of the things, I'll kind of save this to the end of the podcast if we have time, but we have a kind of the crown jewel, in my opinion, of mosquito control is our SIT program, our sterile insect technique, where we radiate male Aedes aegypti mosquitoes and release those to mate with the females. And we can talk about that.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just always assumed like, hey, you guys are out the planes out, or that you kind of go around the neighborhood spraying, and mosquito control's out doing their thing. Like I can't wait for them to come down my block and that be it.
Yeah.
But so it
Yeah.
seems like it's more than that, obviously.
Yes. Yep. And that's one of the things that really, made me gravitate towards mosquito control because I love that public health aspect. I love all the science behind it. And, it's kind of like a giant puzzle putting all those pieces together because, we use a integrated pest management system where, we're using education, physical, mechanical controls, larviciding, adulticiding. So it's amazing. All the talent that we have here at Mosquito Control.
I'm so glad you brought up kind of like your why, because that was going to be my next question. talking about how, from yourself in the classroom to what made you gravitate toward working for, mosquito control district, getting involved. But it sounds like you were saying the public health aspect, just like your interest and fascination with the methodologies that are being used and, these innovative techniques for mosquito control.
Yep. Our number one concern is protecting public health of the citizens of Lee County and their furry friends, like I said, those dogs, but also protecting the environment. The things that we're doing now are so much more environmentally conscious than, 20, 30 years ago. It's completely different. And there's lots of misconceptions because people think, they remember when we had six DC-3 airplanes flying wingtip to wingtip, spraying chemicals mixed with diesel fuel, and it's changed a lot since those days.
As far as going on a ride helicopter, have you, and I think maybe you had shared this once with me or maybe in a class, taking a tour, like have you seen firsthand these breeding grounds?
Yes, yep. Sometimes you can actually see there's so many mosquito larvae in an area that you can actually see it from the helicopter. And then especially again, with all the hurricane damage, you can see a lot of habitat that previously was mangrove areas or, you know, has really kind of opened up new areas. So yeah, you can really see. And that's the first thing in the morning. Our inspectors are going out and helicopters are looking for that standing water. If they find it, they're going to get out. They're going to look for that mosquito larvae. Mosquitoes go through complete metamorphosis. If we can find them in the larval stage, we can use a biological control, which is a lot easier because once they turn into flying, biting adults, it's a lot more difficult. And that's when, we have to get more in the intervention stage rather than the prevention stage. And that's an advantage of being such a large mosquito control district. We can be more preventative than reactionary.
And I think that's so important, like you were saying, because once you're reactionary, then it's like, okay, I feel, and once again, obviously, excuse my ignorance to the topic beyond, when you share it with my students, I guess when I'm not polishing my golden apple,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like it'd be much more challenging, obviously, once you're in the reactive stage of
Yes.
controlling.
Yep. 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 It is. It is. And that's when, at night we get the airplanes out. But, with the county being so large, it's like, the majority of what we do, like I said, is that the preventative using those biological controls,
Uh,
which is a great segue into our high school biology program,
okay, yeah,
which
please
which is
tell.
our last program, and that's actually what I'm teaching tomorrow. We do a bioassay where we bring in a bacteria found naturally in dirt. It's called BTI, and we're using that to control or kill mosquito larvae. So students are able to discover how biological agents can be alternatives for chemical pesticides. Because whenever people see a plane or a helicopter out, they're just assuming that we're
Mhm.
spraying chemicals, but a lot of it is those biological alternatives. And then they do a real, the same type of bioassay that we do at mosquito control, but on a much smaller scale. So they explore what we do with an authentic hands-on lab experience. And I show, a lot of pictures of the students or our entomologists, our scientists doing the same experiment. They're getting to use scientific equipment, pipettes, pipe pumps. They're measuring out things, and then they're looking for that LC90, the point where 90% of the mosquito larvae die, and that's where we would dose out our BTI, our biological agent that we're using to kill the mosquito larvae.
It makes me want to sit in on a high school lesson. I forget. Listen, I love, obviously these programs for the students, but I want a program for the adults because these are the things that I'm honestly learning for the first time hearing when you guys said, talk about, because typically I'm just familiar kind of with the program with the elementary students. And then, if you and I might have like, a conversation,
Yeah.
and, face to face, I had no clue that this is all being done by the mosquito control district.
Yeah. And it just kind of shows me that you're not following our Facebook or Instagram pages because we have great videos up from every school that we go to, and you get to see these amazing students doing these hands-on experiments. So I'm just
You got me on that one.
plugging our
That
programs a little bit. Yeah, but
you,
yeah, no,
yeah,
it is
uh, yeah.
a
I'll
great experience for the students.
and yeah, and definitely when we wrap up the episode, please, I'll have you, please share that with us because people like me can become more familiar with what you're doing and get a good kind of plug in. Have you, this is kind of a silly question, but have you ever been, and I'm almost embarrassed to ask, have you been swarmed by mosquitoes before? Like unintentionally, intentionally, it's kind of like a part of your work to kind of see what that feels like or
Yeah, this is
like,
actually a great story. One of the unique things about being a mosquito educator is, especially during the summer, I get a chance sometimes to go out in the field when we're super busy. Our educators go through what's called mosquito camp, boot camp, where they get to go out with inspectors. They get to go out and kind of do all the jobs that mosquito professionals do. And then we bring those hands-on experiences into the classroom. And I can remember my first year working at mosquito control. I was with one of the boat inspectors and we pulled up to a little mangrove uninhabited island. And I was like, oh, this isn't bad. I'm not going to wear my face net. So I walked in about 30 yards and I have never been swarmed by mosquitoes like I had that day. I like went to brush them off of my forehead and my hand was just covered in mosquitoes and blood. And I was in
oh,
such a hurry to go back and get my face net that
yeah,
I actually, like one of my legs fell into the water and I was wet the rest of the day, but I didn't care. I had my face net. We actually kind of look like beekeepers because those are very aggressive mosquitoes and they just, yeah, I've never been attacked like that before. And sometimes, I'll put my hand in a cage and let them take a blood meal.
are you
But
immune to it now? I mean, I guess you can't be, but like, I mean,
it
I would think
doesn't
you still
feel
have
good,
like
but yeah,
reaction. Yeah.
I don't really react anymore. I've been bitten so many times, but I haven't done that for a while. But yeah, so it's neat
Good
taking,
times.
especially with our, programs, taking pictures of us, in the field really kind of gives us, that like, wow, we have real scientists in the classroom. It kind of gives us that,
Yeah.
street cred to say,
You need
so to say.
that.
So
That's
yeah,
I'm visualizing as you're telling this story. I'm visualizing somebody listening to this episode right now and kind of like it's scratching themselves now, like their skin crawling
yes, yeah,
because you kind of kicked in like some like muscle memory over there of like
yeah.
the time that I got bit.
And I'm so passionate about this. Like I enjoy going and sharing this information, at outreach events and stuff. And when people ask me what I do, my girls kind of roll their eyes, was like, oh no, the next half hour he's going to go on his mosquito fact tour. But it's amazing to do something that you love and that you're passionate about. You know,
I agree, and I could tell that you definitely are passionate about this, and you do love it. Kind of like affectionately known as the mosquito guy, more or less. I
yes,
feel like at least within the schools, especially the elementary schools. All right, we got the mosquito guy coming out tomorrow. Make sure you guys are ready.
yeah.
So,
Or I get recognized more than you would imagine at at Publix and in different places. And like, there's the mosquito guy.
well,
It's funny.
it's it. But popularly county. That's how it goes. So you had mentioned, I don't know if you could go into much detail, but a little like preview of things in the future or things, new innovations you're working on.
Yeah. So we always, are looking to improve. We have surveys that we send out to our teachers that we go into their classrooms getting feedback. We also have a pre and post test to figure out, what our students learn and what they need to work on still. And that kind of helps us drive that instruction. And then Jen and I are working with the University of Florida and we're coming up with just a quick little survey that we can give to make sure that we're meeting those Lee County Mosquito Control District. Are the students wearing insect repellent? Are they dumping standing water? All those types of things. So we're making sure again that we're using data just like a classroom teacher to drive instruction. We're making sure that we're covering all our bases. We know that we're kind of capped out seeing people in person. So we're really trying to expand some of our virtual learning opportunities, but we also know that there's nothing better than us being there in purpose in person. We're really trying to strengthen our social media presence. We just started Instagram, but one of the things that we're going to be doing is hopefully getting a YouTube channel started and be doing, Jen and I are going to be doing episodes from Lee County Mosquito Control that are standards based, but also highlighting job opportunities, career STEM activities that we're doing every day. So we're kind of trying to bring in those real world experiences into the classroom while hitting those standards. And again, I think that's kind of the magic recipe that makes Lee County mosquito education so successful.
I agree. Now, you had mentioned a few minutes ago about social media, like finding what you guys are doing, following. You mind sharing some information, like how? And I'll go ahead and I'll make sure to include, any links, handles, for social media, along with this episode, so that if you're listening to this episode, you can find, Mark and company and his colleagues, along with the mosquito control, Lee County Mosquito Control District, and all the wonderful things they were doing. Can you give us a plug? Can you tell us how we can find you?
Yeah, so if you want to follow us on Facebook and Instagram, if you just want to look up Lee County Mosquito Education, and you'll find us there. Another great Facebook page to follow is Lee County Mosquito Control District, because that has, Jamie Fowler does an excellent job with facts, different different posts that she does several times a week. And then also, if we are treating an area, those treatment areas are shown on the website. So Lee County Mosquito Control District and Lee County Mosquito Education are both Facebook and Instagram places. If you would like to follow, we would appreciate it. We think you'll find them both very educational and entertaining as well.
Yes, and definitely 100%. I encourage you, if you are listening, spread the word, check them out, educate yourself. I know that I'm going to be doing the same. And as far as entertaining goes, it would be a missed opportunity if I did not share kind of a little story about Mark, and kind of a little prank that Mark played on my class and I last year. So those who know Mark, he's a fit guy, right? The fit, I think it's safe to say, right? You're healthy, into
I like
fitness.
to think so.
I think so. Mark's got probably the, voted best biceps, at the mosquito control district, I'm sure. So healthy, I admire, and I look up to Mark as far as, my own personal health goals and all those things, and, get up and down and all over the place. So anyway, Mark had busted me a couple of times in the past, at district events and trainings, kind of sneaking in a little candy bar here and there.
Dunkin'
So
Donuts,
maybe a Dunkin' Donuts.
your
Listen,
coffee. Yep.
yeah, when you're at it all day, PD, my friend, you need as much sugar as possible. Say. So anyway, so Mark decides so he comes and visits my classroom last year when I was at Tanglewood Elementary School, my fifth grade students. And I kind of just see Mark walking around, setting things up. Like, I'm not thinking much of it. And what he was doing actually was he was hiding wrappers, like cake wrappers, candy cookie wrappers, candy wrappers, around my classroom. And I'm oblivious to this. So I'm just kind of like, okay, just kind of, he's doing his thing, getting ready. I'm getting ready for the kids to pay attention to Mark. And then Garcia makes an announcement. He kind of talks about, well, do you know Mr. Camputaro hides some candy and this and that? Have you found anything? And the kid's like, what are you talking about? And this is why it's funny, because I wasn't pretty strict. I was very strict as far as like no candy, no junk, like, because in my classroom, because we would constantly have ants whenever, like, it happens, kids leave, wrappers and candy and crumbs. And then I'm like, all right, I got to call custodians, or they'll be like, ants, whatever. So of course now the kids are like, what do you mean you got candy, Mr. Candy? You told us we can't have candy in the classroom. And they're looking, and Mark's just going around like, oh, look, here's another wrapper. He pulls out like oh, what is this? He had a pack of Oreos. And the kids thought it was really the stuff that I was leaving around hiding snacks in the classroom.
My favorite was the candy bar I found in the printer paper in your printer.
That was, yeah, that was one of the hiding places. So I have this green screen up in my classroom, and so the kids swear that I'm hiding and stashing candy, almost like a pantry, behind my green screen all year. Mark leaves, goes about his business, goes on with his day, goes to another school, goes back to the office. My students hounded me for the next 2 months that I was insisting that I was hiding candy or I had a secret storage place behind my green screen. And they would just constantly just hound me day in, day out. Mosquitoes, well, where's the candy? Why are you hiding the candy? He said you had candy here when the mosquito guy was here. So yeah, ha ha ha. It was all fun and well, but Mark, man, you drove me crazy with that little stuff for about 2 months after you left. Thank you very much.
I'm just trying to help you with your fitness goals as well.
I don't know if that's worked yet, my friend, but it's we're making progress. You know how it goes. Got
You
to do
sh-
those rises shine workouts.
you should post the picture of us in front of your with the golden apple.
Yeah, yeah, I might have to include that in the episode, like a little picture of Mark and I down at the central office at Lee County
Oh
School
no, the one that
District.
we had in your classroom. Remember, in the front of the screen.
Oh yes, 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 yes. I remember now. I know that one too. So, if you can tell, obviously, Mark and I, good friends, great guy, awesome educator, engaging educational content, just like you said, and really just to wrap this all up, Mark, I love what you do. I love how fun you make learning for the students and how you are helping, not only the students of Lee County with the mosquito education program and the mosquito control district, how you're helping the residents within the community and our furry friends. So thank you for everything, Mark.
Can I plug one more thing, one more little piece of advice for teachers?
Absolutely.
Lots of teachers are afraid of that hands-on because they're afraid of negative student behaviors. And I kind of want to flip the script. I want you to focus on engagement because if your students are engaged, you're not going to need to worry about those behaviors. So it's all about perspective, focus on engagement, and you're not going to have those behaviors. Try it, and I guarantee it'll work for you.
Couldn't have said
So
it better myself, Mark. That's an awesome
thank you
way
so
to wrap
much.
it up. My
I really
pleasure.
appreciate having you having me on. I will be in Manatee the first week of December. That's I can just pick up my signed copy of your new book. I'm excited to read that.
Well, thank you. I will have once again, since I don't officially have a sponsor, we'll say that this episode was sponsored by No Frills Teaching LLC with my new book, No Frills Writing, available on Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com. I will have a personalized autographed copy just for you, my friend, when you come out to Manatee. And then I definitely look forward to having you on the show again. We'll get our buddy Shane on, have some
Yes,
laughs,
I appreciate it.
thought some
Yes, it'll
education,
be a
some
great episode.
science.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Once again, this is the No Frills Teacher Podcast, Season 3, Episode 7, Mosquitoes and Methods, Building Engaging Educational Content, featuring Mark McCreary from Lee County Mosquito Control District. Mark, once again, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. Everyone, this is Joe Camp signing off. Have a great night.